Kurtop here, and these are the 100 strangest excavations that forced scientists to apologize. Mysterious objects that are 130,000 years old. Archaeological discoveries in the Racibórz region of Poland have shed light on the activities of Neanderthals more than 130,000 years ago. For 2 years, an international team of specialists, including from the universities of Wrocław and the University of Silesia, as well as the Czech Academy of Sciences, carried out research, planning to study the geological structure of the area. Professor Andrzej Wisniewski noted that the discovery of the stone tools was an unexpected gift. Artifacts found 10 meters underground in sediments formed during the last ice age show that Neanderthals visited the area and left traces of their presence here. Archaeologists have emphasized the uniqueness of some tools, which have double-sided asymmetrical cutting surfaces reminiscent of modern broad-bladed knives. These tools may have been used for specific tasks, such as butchering, and analogs of such objects are rare at other ancient sites north of the Carpathians and the Alps. Secret spectra. It would seem that if this is just an exotic visiting comet, scientists would be thrilled with every open file, posting data to archives and debating it at conferences. This is partly true, but the closer you look at the 3 I/ATLAS observation history, the more strange locks and restricted access notes there are. European databases show that almost all spectral observations of this object are closed until April 20th to 26. This could be explained by the teams wanting to crunch the numbers undisturbed, but then one particular file appears, blocked until January 1st, 2099. 74 years of silence for a single data packet about a simple comet, a period comparable to the classification of military archives. No official explanation is offered. The protocols contain dry project numbers and references to internal agreements. In such an atmosphere, even the calmest person involuntarily wonders what exactly was seen in the spectra of the interstellar object if only people who have not yet been born are allowed to discuss it. A find in a hard-to-reach cave. This bronze dagger with a bone handle is a Bronze Age artifact found in Malta in a nearly inaccessible cave beneath the Dingley Cliff. It dates back to around 2000 BC and belongs to the Borge in Nadur phase, when Malta had an advanced Bronze Age culture. However, it is still unknown why the ancient inhabitants chose this remote cave to deposit their artifacts. Perhaps the site had special significance or ritual value. The dagger's handle is decorated with circular patterns, which is both eye-catching and questionable. This motif is reminiscent of some elements of Mycenaean Greek art, which may indicate cultural influence or trade links. Interestingly, Mycenaean pottery shards were also found in the Bronze Age village where the dagger was discovered. Why was the dagger left in this cave? Was it part of a ritual or a symbol of special status? We can only guess, but every detail, from the green patina on the blade to the mysterious circles on the handle, makes us think about the life and worldview of the ancient Maltese and possible connections with the Mycenaean Greeks. Millions of years ago, the days were shorter. A group of scientists analyzed Rudis shells and was able to establish the length of the day in the Cretaceous period. Rudis are bivalve mollusks that have long since died out. Throughout their lives, they grew, which is why rings formed on the walls of the shell like growth rings in trees. The study showed that 70 million years ago, the day was 30 minutes shorter. This means that at the end of the era of the ancient dinosaurs, the length of the day was 23.5 hours. The study also showed that during the late Cretaceous, ocean temperatures were warmer than previously thought. In summer, the temperature reached 40 degrees Celsius, and in winter, 30 degrees. Strange rays. As 3 I/ATLAS flew past the sun, it was photographed by dozens of observatories, and in one of the images, something happened that literally stunned astronomers. 2 long, thin rays extended from the comet, like light tails, stretched into perfect lines. They stretched for an enormous distance, yet remained sharp and even, as if someone had traced them with a laser. This no longer resembled ordinary dust or gas. Real comet tails always spread out, bend and change with wind and rotation. Here, it was the opposite. Complete stability, as if the object were deliberately maintaining its shape. One scientist said, almost in a whisper, "For the first time, we've seen something that looks too neat." Even skeptics acknowledged, such behavior is unusual for comets. There is no official explanation yet, but it was after this image that even the most cautious scientists began to say, 3I/ATLAS is acting like it's waiting for someone, and it's not the first time it's done this. Prints on the sarcophagus. In 2005, the restoration team worked on an Egyptian sarcophagus at the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge. The coffin belonged to a priest named Nespavirshafet, who died around 1000 BC. Unexpectedly, under the lid, they found the dirty fingerprints of an artisan who made the coffin 3,000 years ago. For some reason, the ancient workers worked on the inner lid before the varnish dried. As a result of such impatience, their prints were preserved for posterity. They were made public only 11 years later in 2016, when the unusual artifact was included in the first major exhibition dedicated to Egyptian artists and how their styles have evolved over 4,000 years. The first signal. On October 24th, the Meerkat radio telescope in South Africa picked up something they had previously tried unsuccessfully to detect. A dip appeared at frequencies of 16.65 and 16.67 megahertz, a weak absorption that occurs when a radio wave passes through a cloud of cold gas. This is usually detected in ordinary comets, but this one was stranger. The signal appeared suddenly, just once, and then disappeared just as quickly, as if someone had turned on a flashlight for a second and then turned it off again. Scientists explain this as the interaction of radio waves with the material of the envelope. But there's a catch. The object is older than the sun. Its surface should have burned out almost completely over billions of years, and its gas emissions should have become extremely weak. Instead, 3I/ATLAS showed activity precisely as it passed a certain point in its trajectory, as if responding to something external. This short signal doesn't resemble a transmission or a code. It's too weak and too fragmentary. But this has never been seen before in the history of observing interstellar objects. If a comet remains silent its entire life and then suddenly responds once, especially when a shockwave from a solar flare passed nearby, the thought inevitably arises. We're looking at something that can change its state, not just evaporate under the star's rays. Scientists are cautiously talking about unusual gas activity, but more and more people are noticing 3I/ATLAS behaves as if it's not just flying, it's responding. The largest Roman mosaic in the last 50 years. One of London's newest landmarks, the glass skyscraper known as the Shard, apparently shares space with one of the city's oldest hidden treasures, a 2,000-year-old, almost surviving Roman mosaic recently discovered. Archaeologists from the Museum of London Archaeology, MOLA, made the discovery earlier this month during excavations in preparation for building work. The team believes that a well-preserved mosaic adorned the floor of the Roman dining room. According to a MOLA press release, the find is the largest Roman mosaic discovered in London in at least 50 years. This is a rare find for the city, as mosaics of this magnitude were rare in cramped urban settings. The original structure containing the mosaic is believed to have been a Roman mansio or luxury motel, offering lodging, a stable, and a dining room. The house's size and luxurious accommodations suggest that it catered to high-ranking officers and their guests. The mosaic consists of two panels, the larger of which probably dates from the late 2nd or early 3rd century AD. The panel is decorated with large, colorful flowers surrounded by bands of intertwining threads and Solomon's knots, a common motif in ancient Roman mosaics, often depicted as two looped ovals. The researchers noted an exact parallel to a mosaic pattern discovered in the German city of Trier, suggesting that both were the work of itinerant Roman artisans at work in London. Tomb of the Heavenly Prince. Recently, scientists made a sensational discovery near the city of Xianyang, China, where they found a long 147-meter tunnel at a depth of 10 meters with a hidden burial place. Within Xianyang, archaeologists have discovered the final resting place of Emperor Xiaomingdi of the Northern Zhou dynasty, who ruled the territory of northern China from 557 to 581 AD. Interestingly, Xiaomingdi abandoned the usual royal title, preferring the title of Heavenly Prince to the honorary title of the Zhou dynasty. His reign was overshadowed by internecine feud with his cousin Yuan Hu, which ended in the death of the emperor. The mystery of the emperor's tomb, designated M655, was revealed during archaeological work near the airport road in Xianyang. The tomb has an elongated shape with an orientation along the north-south axis and contains numerous funeral attributes inside, including ceramic vessels, figurines of warriors and cavalry, a statue of a camel, and figures of mythical creatures. In addition, the found epitaph stone bears an inscription confirming the identity of the deceased as Gongyu Wenjue, Duke of Luoyang of the Zhou dynasty, better known as Emperor Xiaomingdi. This discovery adds new details to the historical portrait of the ruler. A comet older than the Sun. The interstellar object 3I/ATLAS was discovered quite recently, but it's actually older than anything we typically consider old in the solar system. Observations with the James Webb Space Telescope revealed that its surface is seemingly cemented by cosmic rays. Ice and rock are saturated with radiation to a depth of up to 20 meters, forming a thick crust that behaves unlike typical cometary soil. Scientists estimated how much carbon dioxide the nucleus emits, and based on this consumption, they deduced the age of the journey, approximately 7 billion years, meaning the object launched when neither Earth nor the Sun existed. This creates a strange picture. A body born in another solar system, hurtling through the interstellar void for billions of years, surviving the ray bombardment, preserving its internal gas reserves, and only now accidentally encountering our solar system. Skeptics emphasize the word accidentally, while ufologists emphasize the word too long, because for them, billions of years aren't just time, but a period during which any natural trajectory can be transformed into a very deliberate one. Trousers of the Steppe Chieftain. For most of us, the word Xiongnu is associated with the nomadic Hunnu, whose raids terrified ancient Rome. The Huns really have a genetic relationship with them. About this legendary, long-disappeared people, the creator of the world's first nomadic empire is known mainly from the ancient chronicles of its great neighbor, the Chinese Empire of Han. The burial mounds in the Noin Ula Mountains in the north of Mongolia, where noble representatives of this nomadic people were buried about 2,000 years ago, became a source of important information on the history and culture of not only the Xiongnu, but also all the ancient civilizations of Central Asia, China, and the Middle East. In 2012, during the excavations of the 22nd Noin Ula Mound, robbed in antiquity, the Russian-Mongolian archaeological expedition discovered a large number of original items, including unique textiles. From all the costume of the steppe leader decorated with barbaric splendor, only the leggings were completely preserved, the trousers that were not sewn together, which were attached to the belt. Wide ones made of purple silk embroidered woolen fabric and with felt boots sewn to them were obviously worn over ordinary trousers and served as an elegant attribute to the ancient mod. The dye with which the fabric was dyed, the shape of the linen weaving, the quality of the seams and embroidery, the shape of the patterns testify that this textile product reflects the fashion and technological trends of 3 different cultures of that time. Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania. One of the world's most important archaeological sites isn't a lost city or a treasure-filled tomb, it's a steep ravine in Tanzania's Great Rift Valley. Known as Olduvai Gorge, this site holds the earliest evidence of human ancestors. In the 1930s, husband and wife paleoanthropologists, Lewis and Mary Leakey, discovered stone tools in Olduvai Gorge, as well as the remains of the skull of the primate proconsul, which is 25 million years old. Then, in 1959, Mary Leakey discovered skull fragments and upper teeth belonging to Paranthropus boisei, an early human or hominin ancestor that lived about 1.75 million years ago. At the time, P. Paranthropus boisei was the oldest hominin ever discovered. Leakey and their 2 sons also discovered another human ancestor, Homo habilis, in Olduvai Gorge. In 1968, Peter and Zube discovered a 1.8 million-year-old Homo habilis skull at the site. And in 1986, a team of archaeologists from Tanzania and the United States discovered hundreds of bones belonging to a female Homo habilis who also lived about 1.8 million years ago. Heading for the moon. The longer 3I/ATLAS was observed, the stronger the feeling became that its trajectory was heading too confidently toward the moon. Skeptics attributed this to simple geometry. Most interstellar objects cross the plane of the ecliptic, but later calculations revealed a far more disturbing detail. The object wasn't simply passing by, it was slowing down. And it was doing so precisely where a typical comet would accelerate under the influence of gravity. At that moment, the old debate about how natural the moon itself was resurfaced. Over the decades, too many oddities had accumulated. Its perfectly round shape, its synchronous rotation without the slightest glitch, the incredible density of its crust, and those seismic signals that make the lunar surface ring like a metallic shell. These anomalies are usually mentioned separately without any attempt to integrate them into a larger picture. But when an interstellar object begins to behave as if it chooses the moon as its final destination, all these details cease to seem random. Scientists cautiously stated, 3I/ATLAS is showing signs of controlled deceleration. Ufologists put it more simply, it's heading where something already exists. And old theories about the moon being an ancient mechanism or even an artificial body suddenly cease to sound like science fiction. If everything we observe is truly not random, then the logic is simple. The ship is flying to a specific point. Chukotka's Whale Graveyard. In remote Chukotka near the village of Yaang Valley, a drone captured one of the most unusual sights in the Arctic, a whale graveyard. The bones and skulls of these sea giants, collected here over decades, lie on the tundra shore. Locals consider this place sacred. Whaling in Chukotka has ancient roots and is still permitted in a limited manner. Harpooned whales are hauled ashore, part of the carcass is ritually returned to the sea, and the remaining bones are laid along the coast. In the 1990s, when industrial whaling was temporarily permitted due to food shortages, remains began to be stored on the outskirts of settlements. Over time, they formed large clusters, which became known as whale graveyards. The Chukchi performed rituals to appease the spirits of the sea. Whale skulls were placed vertically, believing that this way the animal's spirit looks out to the ocean and sees its way back to rebirth. These traditions continue today, although whale hunting is conducted exclusively within the guidelines of the International Whaling Commission. The whale graveyard in Yaang Valley has become a unique symbol of the connection between humans and nature. For local residents, it is not a place of death, but a reminder of the cycle of life and respect for the animals that provide people with food and warmth. Crystal skulls. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, perfectly polished skulls made of solid rock crystal appeared. Not a line about excavations, only mysterious sellers who assured that these were Mayan relics capable of singing in the moonlight and opening doors to other worlds. The legend quickly acquired details. They said that there were exactly 13 such skulls, that together they projected a map of the stars or kept a message about the disappeared heavenly mentors. Mediums assured that the crystal resonated with brainwaves, deciphering ancient wisdom, and modern master lithotherapists sold activation sessions for the price of jewelry. When the British Museum and the Smithsonian Institution scanned the most famous skulls with a scanning electron microscope in the 1990s, the surface revealed the telltale marks of a diamond-coated rotating tool that would not appear until after the 1860s. Moreover, the quartz structures lack the internal cracks that would inevitably arise from hand sanding, meaning the artifact was almost certainly carved on a modern machine. But one skull, allegedly found in Belize before the influx of mass counterfeits, still baffles experts. There are no receipts for the purchase, no archaeological protocol, only stories from previous owners. They swear that the crystal was literally polished over centuries. A drop of water, a pinch of quartz dust, and the patience of Mayan craftsmen. Scientists are almost certain that they are looking at a late copy, but still leave a small chance for the truth. What if this really is the work of ancient hands? We just haven't figured out what tool was used to create it? A maneuver in the void. Even setting aside the classified archives, the 3I/ATLAS trajectory itself looks as if it were drawn by a concerned navigator. A report from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory carefully, almost shyly, describes the object's non-gravitational acceleration as it approaches the Sun, the radial acceleration directed away from the star, and the transverse acceleration perpendicular to this line don't fit into the smooth ballistics of a rock in a gravitational well. Formally, this can be attributed to the jet thrust of gases. Ice evaporates, jets eject dust, and the nucleus gives itself a slight push. The problem is that this push was too gentle, too consistent, and occurred at a distance of hundreds of millions of kilometers from the Sun, where ordinary comets still behave sluggishly. The Glozel Tablet. In 1924, clay tablets with mysterious symbols and images were discovered in the small village of Glozel in France, causing a heated debate in the scientific community. These artifacts, found by a young farmer Émile Fradet, were so unusual that they could not be linked to any known ancient civilization. The tablets contain symbols and images reminiscent of ancient writings, but their origin and meaning remain unclear. Some researchers have hypothesized that the Glozel tablets may be evidence of a lost or unknown culture that developed in the region thousands of years ago. Another more radical theory suggests that the tablets may be traces of extraterrestrial intervention, although there is very little evidence for this. However, the authenticity of the tablets remains in question. Since their discovery, scientists have conducted numerous studies to understand whether they are real ancient artifacts or skillful forgeries. To date, none of the versions have received definitive confirmation, and the Glozel tablets continue to be one of the most mysterious archaeological finds of the 20th century. 5 untouched ancient tombs in Saqqara. Egypt has revealed recently discovered well-decorated ancient tombs in a pharaonic necropolis near the capital, Cairo. 5 tombs were discovered earlier this month and belong to the Old Kingdom, a period spanning roughly 2700 to 2200 BC. Mustafa Waziri, General Secretary of the High Council of Antiquities, said Egyptian archaeologists began excavations in September. According to him, the tombs were intended for high-ranking officials, including regional rulers and palace guards in ancient Egypt. All these 5 tombs are well-painted and decorated. The excavations have not stopped to this day. Archaeologists plan to continue them. They believe they can find more tombs in the area. Skeleton of a woman without a face. In Germany, archaeologists discovered a mysterious burial from the 9th century. The man lay unharmed, but the wife's facial bones were not preserved and no funerary objects were found next to her. Excavations were carried out near Eisleben, on the site where the royal palace of Helfta was once located. The woman's height was 1.55 meters, but her skeleton had a defect. Her face has been hollowed out. The man apparently held an important position. Perhaps he was a high-ranking official or military man, as confirmed by the objects found on him: a knife, a belt, and parts of an official staff. At the same time, no accessories were found on the woman, which became especially interesting for researchers. Felix Biermann from Saxony-Anhalt suggested that the woman could be a Christian while her husband still adhered to pagan traditions. This could explain the lack of funerary objects since the Christian tradition rejected earthly decorations after death. Unknown lunar material. When China brought back the first ever samples from the far side of the moon, they expected to find ordinary regolith, fused by meteorite impacts. But among the 5,000 fragments, 7 samples were discovered that defied scientists' expectations. They contained excessive amounts of olivine, a mineral characteristic of meteorites but not lunar rock. Chemical analysis revealed that these fragments did not match any known type of lunar mineral. Comparison of iron, manganese, nickel, and silicon isotopes yielded an unexpected result. The material was identical to Ci chondrites, the most water-rich and rarest meteorites in the solar system. On Earth, such meteorites are almost never preserved. They are porous, brittle, and soft. They would not survive atmospheric entry. On the moon, it's a different story. Without air or braking, they arrive at full speed, melt, and instantly solidify, preserving their structure. These 7 fragments are the first confirmed case of Ci chondrites being found on the moon in an unaltered state. And most importantly, there were more of them than expected. It is estimated that up to a third of all meteorites that have ever fallen to the moon could be of this type. This is not just a rarity, it is the remnant of a massive bombardment that occurred when the Earth and Moon were just forming. But the most interesting thing is something else. CI chondrites are the leading candidate for the role of carriers of water and organic matter in the early solar system. And if there are so many of them on the Moon, then part of that history was recorded there. Not on Earth, where tectonics and the atmosphere destroy everything, but on the far side of the satellite, which served as a kind of archive for billions of years. The irony is that while we are debating whether the Moon is artificial or not, it is the very first to yield material that defies conventional models of the origin of water and, perhaps, life itself. Ancient giant lake in Africa. Several thousand years ago, this lake was the largest in Central Africa, and if it existed in the same volumes now, it would be the largest in the world. NASA has shared a satellite image of this basin within its current boundaries. This reservoir, called Mega Chad, stretched on the site of the current Sahara Desert and had an area of 390,000 square kilometers. According to experts, the lake took 200 years to shrink to 350 square kilometers. Currently, the inhabitants of Niger, Nigeria, Chad, and Cameroon are actively pumping water out of it, and the lake continues to decrease. In 2015, scientists detailed how long it took for the ancient lake to shrink to its current size. The researchers wrote that about 5,000 years ago, the North African wet period with high rainfall ended and the largest lake in Africa began to shrink. The area called Bodel Bassin was covered with water thousands of years ago. According to researchers, about 1,000 years ago, there were still remains of moisture. However, the lack of rain eventually dried up the lake. Ancient sword in the river. A medieval sword was recently discovered in the depths of a Polish river, which experts say may have links to the Vikings. This sword is decorated with a mysterious inscription and is one of 8 similar artifacts found in Poland. The discovery was made during deep-sea exploration in the port of Włocławek, near Torun, a UNESCO-protected city. The sword, which had survived centuries of corrosion, was dated to the 10th century AD. This period is extremely significant for the history of Poland, linking the beginning of the formation of the state with the Piast dynasty. The sword could have witnessed the birth of the Polish nation. Historically, swords of this type are associated with northwestern Europe, suggesting Scandinavian or Frankish origin. However, the exact roots and connection to the Vikings remain a matter of debate among historians. Of particular interest is the inscription U Valfberth, found under layers of corrosion which may indicate the name Ulfbert. This name appears on swords found in northern Europe dating from the 9th to 11th centuries, adding to the mystery of the sword's history. Ancient city in an oasis. Archaeologists have discovered the ruins of an ancient city over 4,000 years old in the Khaybar Oasis in northwestern Saudi Arabia. The city, called Al-Nata, was founded around 2400 BC and consisted of about 50 houses, designed to accommodate about 500 people. The city was surrounded by a powerful wall 14.5 kilometers long, which probably protected its inhabitants from raids and harsh climate. Interestingly, Al-Nata was preserved thanks to a basalt layer that protected the ruins from destruction. The discovery was made possible by observations from above. The structure of the city walls and buildings hidden underground was visible from the air. Al-Nata became an important evidence of the transition of the region's inhabitants from a nomadic lifestyle to a settled one. Previously, scientists believed that at that time this territory was only a desert, unsuitable for life. However, finds in the necropolis, including metal axes, daggers, and agate items, indicate a high level of development of crafts and technologies. UFO over Moscow. The morning of October 27th over Moscow began with a phenomenon that too many people saw simultaneously to attribute to an optical error. A bright object flew over several towns in the Moscow region: Ramenskoye, Fryazino, Krasnogorsk, and Lyubertsy. It didn't move like a fireball. It didn't leave a typical trail, and it disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, as if cutting a short streak of light from the sky. For the first few hours, no one explained anything. Meteorites are usually identified faster than the first video appears on social media. Here, silence. And at precisely that moment, a strange coincidence occurred. NASA removed data from its website about asteroid 2025 US-6, which was expected to make a close approach to Earth in those days. If it wasn't that, why remove the information? The theory about a Chinese satellite was dismissed almost immediately. The object's shape didn't match any list of space debris, and its trajectory didn't match either. And then attention shifted to the Russian Academy of Sciences. 5 days after the incident, academics reported that the object had broken into pieces and fallen in the Novgorod and Tver regions. But even this version sounded unusual. They called it a bright iron or ironstone bolide, although the flashes described by eyewitnesses are not typical for such a composition. And most importantly, they again mentioned non-standard orbital features. If it really was a bolide, then why did NASA's data disappear? Why did the reports appear only several days later? And why did no one report the explosions in the Novgorod region, which should have been heard by dozens of populated areas? Ufologists have put forward a straightforward theory. Part of the craft may have made an emergency landing. It was perhaps monitored in advance, including by NASA. And if so, it's not surprising that the information was quickly removed and the crash site was sealed. There are no official answers. But the combination, a bright object with an unusual trajectory, deleted data, delayed comments, and 2 falling regions, looks too strange to ignore. Zoratz-Karer. The large megalithic complex of Zoratz-Karer, which is also called the Armenian Stonehenge, is one of the most mysterious ancient structures in the Caucasus. This ancient monument, located in the south of Armenia, consists of hundreds of vertically installed stones, some of which reach several meters in height. Of particular interest are the stones with holes in the upper part, which attract the attention of researchers and lovers of mysticism. Zoratz-Karer dates back to about the 6th millennium BC, which makes it one of the most ancient structures of this type. Supporters of theories about extraterrestrial civilizations hypothesize that these holes could have served to observe the stars or even to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. They argue that the accuracy of the location of the holes and the orientation of the stones may indicate astronomical or some other more complex functions that could not have been available to the ancient inhabitants of Armenia without outside help. However, there is no scientific evidence to support these theories. Most researchers are of the opinion that the Armenian Stonehenge was an ancient observatory used to observe celestial bodies, or was a place where rituals and ceremonies were held. This ancient monument continues to attract the attention of researchers and tourists, inspiring the search for answers about its true role in the life of ancient civilizations. 3 amazing artifacts. Archaeologists have made a discovery that could change our understanding of the history of ancient Egypt. The lost tomb of Pharaoh Thutmos II was recently found, an event comparable to the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922. However, unlike the famous Golden Boy tomb, the tomb of Thutmos II was badly damaged. After the pharaoh's death, the room was flooded and most of the relics were probably moved to another location. One of the key artifacts is fragments of alabaster vessels decorated with the name of Thutmos II. These duck-shaped vessels were used in rituals and testified to the high status of their owner. The inscription on them helped confirm that the tomb did indeed belong to this pharaoh. Another important find is fragments of paintings that fell from the ceiling and walls. The researchers found that the ceiling was once painted blue and dotted with stars, and the walls were decorated with texts from the Book of Amduat, an ancient Egyptian text that tells of the journey of the sun god Ra in the afterlife. Such images were only found in the tombs of pharaohs and close nobles. Another artifact found was a wooden rod that could have been part of a spear or a ceremonial fan used for fanning the pharaoh. The shaft bears an inscription with the title of the king, which became further evidence that the tomb belonged to Thutmos II. Rock Crystal Reliquary. This reliquary, created in France between 1175 and 1200, is a work of art and religious craftsmanship. It is made of gold and silver and decorated with rock crystal, which adds transparency and lightness. The relics of saints or other valuable relics of great importance to believers could be kept inside. Such reliquaries often became objects of worship. They were exhibited in churches and monasteries where they attracted pilgrims from all over. The design of the reliquary itself is especially interesting. It is made in the form of a miniature building with decorative arches, columns, and small figures of saints, which symbolize the idea of a spiritual temple. The transparent cylinder of rock crystal allowed believers to see the contents, which strengthened their faith in the sanctity of the stored relics. Signals on old photographic plates. Sometimes the future hides not in new telescopes but in old archive boxes. In the United States, photographic plates from the 1950s, old observatory series taken long before the digital age, were recently re-examined. Strange flashes were noticed in these images, small bright dots that appear only in one frame and disappear in the next. Astronomers call such objects transients. Typically, they are defects or rare bursts of cosmic rays. But here a chain began that can no longer be called a coincidence. Scientists compared the dates of these dots' appearance with the nuclear test calendar, and it turned out that the probability of such a flash increased by almost 45% in the 24 hours following the explosion. In other words, the sky literally reacted. And not with the light of the explosion, which couldn't be reflected for 24 hours, but with the appearance of unknown objects, which were recorded on the photographic plates as fast, single-frame pulses. And it gets even stranger. Researchers investigated the UFO reports of those days. They discovered that the more press reports, the more transients in the images. It was as if two independent systems, human eyes and old cameras, were recording the same phenomenon, but from different angles, as if something were reacting to nuclear tests. The transients weren't atmospheric flares, their spectra don't match plasma or light from heated air. They weren't plate defects. Matching between different observatories can't be attributed to emulsion chemistry. And they weren't satellites. In the 1950s, they simply didn't exist in sufficient numbers, and the orbits of the first spacecraft are known down to the second. As a result, the researchers came up with a strange statistic. Every time a person detonated something on Earth, the sky responded. What exactly appeared over the test site on those days? No one knows. But now that we see an object flying near Earth that reacts to solar flares, changes its trajectory, and displays strange signals, these archival images no longer look like a museum exhibit. Artifact stolen 15 years ago. 15 years ago, an unnamed Israeli resident stole a 2,000-year-old catapult core from the Jerusalem Walls National Park. The time has come to clear my conscience. Looks like the end of the world is near. He returned the artifact with the help of an intermediary, Moshe Monis. He said that the thief, when he stole the core, was still a boy, and for the last 15 years, while the stone was lying in his house, it was very hard for the man because of the guilt he felt. And now, when he stumbled upon it again while cleaning before Easter, he was affected by the apocalyptic forebodings associated with the coronavirus. He felt that it was time to clear his conscience and asked Monis to help return the stolen goods. The cannonball, which the Israelites stole, was most likely used to lay siege to the city walls during the war between the inhabitants of the city and the Roman forces in 70 BC.
Treasures of Ghana. Two leading British museums have agreed with the Ghanaian government to return gold artifacts stolen in the 19th century. Last May, the Asante Hene, King of Ghana, met in London with the directors of the British Museum and the Victoria and Albert Museum. It was decided to transfer 32 gold exhibits taken by the British 150 years ago to Ghana for 3 years. In 1874, the British plundered the royal palace in Ghana. In 1896, another military operation took place, leading to further robberies. The museum's joint statement acknowledged that the seized items have cultural and historical significance to the Asante people and are linked to British colonial history. Items being returned include a golden peace pipe purchased at auction for £85, as well as rings, scabbards, soul discs, knives, and necklaces. The British fear that this agreement could become a precedent for the return of other items captured during the colonial wars. Personally, I am very glad that finally valuable exhibits from museums are gradually beginning to return to their homeland.
Glowing over a volcano. When you live at the foot of an active volcano, it's hard to be surprised. Lava fountains, smoke, trembling earth. It's all part of the familiar rhythm. But what witnesses saw at one of Central America's active volcanoes doesn't fit that rhythm at all. A bright, glowing ring appeared in the night sky, smooth, closed, as if drawn with a compass. It hovered directly above the vent without changing altitude, drifting, or disintegrating. For anyone who's seen smoke and fog around volcanoes, this is already odd. Hot air constantly rises, and any cloud should dissolve within seconds. But the object held its shape, as if something were holding it together from within. It glowed with a soft white light, as if reflecting something outside. But neither the moon nor the cities in the area could have produced such a uniform glow. The video shows the ring seemingly rotating, not around its axis, but as a solid structure, reacting to the camera's movement. And this no longer resembles smoke, ash, or some rare atmospheric phenomenon. Local geologists checked their equipment. The sensors detected no electrical flashes, magnetic pulses, or gas emissions that could have produced such an effect. However, a few minutes before the object's appearance, the volcano somehow decreased its activity. The heat flow dropped and seismic vibrations became more even, as if something had calmed the system. Such incidents are occasionally recorded around the world, but most often over volcanoes, craters, and faults. Most of these places are natural energy hubs on the planet. Hotspots where gases, radiation, and electricity rise. And whatever it was, over the volcano, it behaved as if it were studying the workings of the Earth's very heart. There is no official conclusion. Meteorologists called it an anomalous cloud. Eyewitnesses said it's not a cloud. Ancient records of epidemic outbreaks. Chinese scientists have made a discovery. In their hands were the Jiaguwen texts, which describe how people fought dangerous epidemics 3,000 years ago. The very first texts, discovered by scientists as early as 1899, were inscribed on the bones and shells of turtles. They contain a huge amount of information about ancient Chinese history. Among all this, archaeologists have found fragments that contain records of an outbreak of a dangerous disease that occurred about 3,000 years ago. According to these records, a dangerous infection spread in the capital of the Shang Yin dynasty, near modern Anyang, which also affected the then ruler of China. The main method of combating this scourge was various kinds of sacrifices. Among the other methods of fighting the infection, there were also more rational views, for example, the creation of closed zones. This suggests that the inhabitants of the long-disappeared states had sufficient knowledge of the quarantine and did everything to avoid dangerous contacts. With colored masks and golden tongues. In the historical area of Albanasa in Egypt, a team of Spanish archaeologists, led by Dr. Maite Mascoro and Dr. Esther Pons Malado from the University of Barcelona, made a significant discovery. Scientists have discovered ancient rock-cut tombs, as well as a number of valuable artifacts, allowing for a more in-depth study of the history of this region. A team of archaeologists has found tombs that date back to the Ptolemaic and Roman eras, revealing a unique burial method. One of the most amazing finds are terracotta statues of Isis Aphrodite, decorated with crowns of leaves, which are an important addition to the study of the art of that era. The excavations also uncovered Roman-era mummies adorned with gilded and colored funerary masks. An interesting feature was the discovery of golden tongues in the mouths of some mummies, which indicates ancient burial customs designed to keep the deceased capable of conversation in the afterlife. Adel Lokasa, head of the Central Authority of Antiquities of Middle Egypt, stressed the importance of finding a ruined building with unique designs depicting plants, vines, and animals. These images provide valuable insight into the culture and life in Albanus in ancient times. New Giant Pyramid. A giant underground pyramid, Gunung Padang, has been discovered in Indonesia, surpassing Stonehenge and the pyramids of Giza in antiquity. This place, shrouded in mystery and considered sacred by local residents of the island of West Java, is known as the Punden Berundak, the Step Pyramid. Archaeological work has only just begun, but has already shown that Gunung Padang may be the oldest pyramidal structure in the world, created on top of an extinct volcano before the advent of agriculture. New research suggests there may be chambers full of the unknown inside the hill. The name Mountain of Enlightenment emphasizes that an ancient civilization could have turned a volcanic hill into the base of a pyramid many millennia ago. Radiocarbon dating shows that construction began around the last ice age, making it older than 16,000 years ago and possibly even 27,000 years ago, putting it on par with Göbekli Tepe in age. Between 2011 and 2015, a team conducted a comprehensive analysis using drilling and seismic surveys. They found that Gunung Padang was built in several stages. While exploring the interior of the hill, scientists discovered signs of hidden chambers, some of which reach 15 meters in length and 10 meters in height, which confirms the uniqueness and mystery of this ancient structure. A black ring over Disneyland. Disneyland is the last place you'd expect to see anything out of the ordinary. Everything is designed to seem manageable, predictable, and fun. But one day, a perfect black ring hangs right above the park, smooth, solid, as if carved in the air. The video shows hundreds of people looking up. Some think it's smoke, others think it's a special effect. But the ring doesn't dissipate, doesn't drift or rise. It simply hangs in the sky, as if someone has opened a thin black portal into the void. The perfect circle is the first oddity. Smoke never behaves like that. Any cloud raised by pyrotechnics disintegrates within seconds, stretching and being torn by currents of wind. But here, the geometry is perfect, as if the shape is held together from within. The second oddity is the silence. If this were the aftermath of a volley or a burst of fire, the sound would echo throughout the entire area. But the cameras record absolute silence. People are shouting and discussing, but the object itself makes no sound. Third is duration. The ring hangs in the air too long to be smoke. It doesn't change thickness, doesn't waver, doesn't shift. And only after a few minutes does it slowly dissolve into thin air, as if someone had turned off the source. Rumors of such an anomaly have long circulated. Similar black rings have been seen over fields in England, over lakes in Canada, over Indian cities. Their origin has never been explained. The most popular theory is that it's not an object, but a plasma discharge or the residual trace of some technology. But no one can say what it is. Such rings often appear in crowded places of mass gatherings, concerts, festivals, parks. It's as if whoever creates them wants the phenomenon to be seen or wants to study people's reactions. Disneyland's official statement was brief. It was a pyrotechnic effect, but the footage shows no fire, sparks, or flashes. Ancient wooden artifact. Archaeologists in Britain have discovered one of the oldest and best preserved wooden tools. This ancient wooden spade-shaped tool, found in the wetlands near Poole Harbor, dates back to the Middle Bronze Age and is approximately 3,500 years old. Due to its submersion in water, the wood has been preserved in an amazing state. Researchers have determined that the spade was carved from oak and would have required many hours of painstaking work, highlighting its importance to its prehistoric owner. Radiocarbon dating has shown that it is around 3,500 years old, making it a unique find for Britain. The tool may have been used for tilling the land, cutting peat, or even fishing, the main occupations of local residents. Scientists believe that during this period, people led a semi-seasonal lifestyle on the wetlands, using the area's resources during the warm season and leaving it in the winter when the areas were flooded. The discovery site was presumably used for drying peat or storing supplies. Canned food from the 1960s on a 15th century ship. It all happened on the shores of the Baltic Sea in the city of Tallinn. Workers in Estonia were doing construction work when they stumbled upon an ancient ship covered in earth. They came to the conclusion that the ship sank in the 15th century. On the wooden side of the ship, no one expected to see modern canned food. Later, archaeologists even found markings on untouched cans that said that the canned food was released in 1972. Having examined the ship, they also noticed firearms of past centuries, by which they judged the age of the ship. But for some reason, a modern steel cable was attached to the bow of the old ship. This find is also attributed to the 20th century. Estonian archaeologists already have an explanation for this amazing fusion of finds from different eras. They concluded that the ship actually spent many centuries underwater, but during the Soviet era, it interfered with shipping or other work. That's when the workers forgot their cable and canned food on board. In order to somehow test this assumption, scientists are looking for witnesses and workers who used to raise this ship in the last century or worked in the port nearby. Thanks to eyewitnesses, it is possible to find out exactly at what time the ship was pulled out last time. In the meantime, scientists are closely studying the find. Perhaps this ship will tell us more than one secret. Throne of Tutankhamun, which is 3,300 years old. The place of honor on which the ruler was always tried to highlight especially. In any culture, he was not only the head of the people, he ruled on behalf of the gods. A special chair, a throne, is a symbol of chosenness and power. In 1922, Tutankhamun's tomb was opened. The throne of this young Egyptian pharaoh was found in it. Tutankhamun died when he was 19 years old, around 1323 BC. The throne is very interesting both as a regalia of the ruler and as a work of art. And, like a family photo album, the tomb was not plundered, so the throne has survived to this day almost untouched. The thieves managed to remove only precious stones and some gold details. The throne itself is made of wood and covered with plates of gold. Mosaic drawings are lined with glass, quartz, enamel, and ivory. So even with the gems removed, the throne is still beautiful and the drawings are as informative as possible. It is the image on the back of the throne that makes it such an exceptional artifact. The drawings are very different from how it was customary to depict the pharaohs. They were supposed to be depicted as imperious, standing firmly on their feet. And on the back of Tutankhamun's throne, he is placed in a nice homely environment. The pharaoh sits relaxed in an armchair and his wife anoints him with oils. They seem to be having a nice family conversation. The fact that this is the wife of Tutankhamun is understandable because the couple has paired bracelets on their ankles, symbols of marriage. We see a boy, young and carefree. The researchers even claim that he is swaying in his chair. If you look closely, the legs of the throne in the image are uneven on the floor. The back ones are higher than the front ones. One might think that this chair, as a symbol of power, has nothing to do with the throne. But the armrests are decorated with enamel-winged snakes, and the back is decorated with 4 cobras with solar discs on their heads. This is a symbol of wisdom. The legs are decorated in the form of lion heads at the top and paws at the bottom. This is a symbol of power. It is not clear whether the throne was made specifically for the tomb or whether the pharaoh used it during his lifetime. Still, the images do not indicate the afterlife. Meredith Stone. This is an egg-shaped artifact with a beautiful relief on the surface. It was found in 1872 on the shore of a lake in New Hampshire. This stone is distinguished by a clearly defined relief on the surface, which is represented by a human face. It is noteworthy that Meredith Stone is quartzite, the processing of which without tools is almost impossible. However, the stone was polished almost perfectly, and it seems that the stone was processed and drilled with a modern drill, and the stone itself appeared no later than the 19th century. Scientists cannot explain who and why created this artifact, and most importantly, for what purpose. Rare coin depicting a murdered Roman emperor. The coin was discovered by Mate Varga, an employee of the Ripple-Ronai Museum in Kaposvar, together with volunteers at the beginning of 2022. They are excavating a Roman settlement in the county of Somogy in southwestern Hungary. However, the exact location of the object is not reported. The rarest coin, weighing 5.6 grams, depicts Emperor Volusian, who ruled the Roman Empire from 251 to 253 AD. Volusian's co-ruler was Trebonianus Gallus. During their reign, a large-scale epidemic of plague struck the Roman Empire at the same time as the Persian invasion devastated the eastern provinces. 2 years after coming to power, Gallus and Volusian were killed by their soldiers during the rebellion of the Moesian governor Marcus Aemilius Aemilianus. Due to the short reign of Volusian, coins bearing his likeness are rare. Moreover, the denomination of the coin is also rare. Archaeologists do not know who the coin belonged to, but since it was the only one discovered at this site, it was probably lost by some traveler. One side of the coin depicts a portrait of a bearded emperor with a crown of rays on his head, while the other side depicts Libertas, the Roman goddess of freedom. The coin is now part of the numismatic collection of the Ripple-Ronai Museum, which previously contained only one Roman gold coin.
Objects over Yorkshire. In Yorkshire, people began photographing strange dark ovals hovering low above the horizon. At first, everyone thought they were birds or drones until new images emerged, taken by different people on different days, but with the same shape and the same stillness. Experts examined the images. No wingspan, no propellers, no characteristic motion blur. The object hung in the air as if unaffected by gravity or wind. In one of the images, a subtle glow along the contour was visible, not bright, but steady, as if light emanating from within. Meteorologists ruled out atmospheric distortion, aviation ruled out their own devices, and astronomers ruled out satellites. And still, no explanation was found. For several weeks, the objects appeared almost on schedule, before sunset, on the same horizon, and then abruptly, they disappeared. If this had happened only once, it would have been chalked up to a camera artifact. But similar oval shadows with a glow have been reported in Canada, the United States, and Eastern Europe. Similar shapes, similar behavior, immobility, a smooth outline, disappearing without a trace. It's as if someone is watching us. And what's most frightening is that UFOs are becoming increasingly common these days.
Heavenly stones. Among the vast number of meteorites that have fallen to Earth over billions of years, skystone, with its bluish tint and unusual oxygen-rich composition, is of particular interest to scientists. This space fragment, discovered in West Africa in Sierra Leone by archaeologist and geologist Angelo Pittoni in 1990, is shrouded in legends. Local residents believe that these stones were former celestial beings turned into stones for their sins and dropped to Earth. Tests carried out in laboratories in Rome, Germany, and Tokyo showed that the stone consists of 77% oxygen, 20% carbon and lime, and also contains traces of silicon and other materials. This composition was recognized as unique and unlike other terrestrial samples, indicating the extraterrestrial origin of the stone. Carbon dating has shown that the sky stone ended up on Earth between 2,500 and 17,000 years ago, becoming the object of a collector's hunt. Along with skystone, the Hypatia stone found in Libya is no less a mystery for scientists. Its chemical composition is different from anything found on Earth or in space. Hypatia is material formed before the formation of our solar system. Thus, skystone and Hypatia stone continue to attract researchers with their mystery and unique composition. Would you like to own one of these stones? Sculptures of a lost tribe. In China's Guizhou province, an unusual stone valley named Yalang has been created. It was created by artist, cartoonist, and Professor Song Pei-lun, who dedicated over 20 years to the project. He created hundreds of sculptures, towers, and walls assembled from stone over an area of approximately 185,000 square meters. The complex includes artificial castles, ponds, and alleys with faces carved into the rocks. Local masons participated in the project, and Song Pei-lun trained them in a special technique, working without drawings, using stones as if constructing simple fences. This approach allowed him to preserve the natural forms and irregularities of the rock. The material used was local limestone, which is both affordable and environmentally friendly. The idea for Yaang Valley came to the artist after a visit to the United States, where he saw the Crazy Horse Memorial. Pei-lun decided to create a similar project in China to commemorate the extinct Yalang tribe who lived in these lands almost 2,000 years ago. The ancient people left no written records, and the valley became an attempt to restore their memory through art. Today, the complex has become a cultural center. University buildings have been built near the valley, and students help Pei-lun with construction and maintenance. The project is perceived as a fusion of archaeology, architecture, and memory. The Yalang Valley has become an example of how modern people can reconstruct the past, not through artifacts, but through their own perceptions of what might have been forgotten. Smiling pot. It is not often that you meet an ancient potter with a sense of humor. When archaeologists dug up a 4,000-year-old pot, it smiled at them. In 2017, when a 7-year-old excavation near the Syrian border uncovered another broken pot in Turkey near the Syrian border, it seemed that there was nothing unusual about it. But when the restoration team collected the pieces into a large pot, they noticed something very familiar to modern people: a smiley face. Around 1700 BC, someone squeezed out a pair of eyes in the wet clay and emphasized them with a smile. The single-handled white vessel used to consume sherbet is today considered the oldest emoji in history. The place where it was found is called Carchemish, and it once belonged to the Hittites.
Collision at altitude. A Boeing 737 MAX was cruising at 9,000 meters, an altitude devoid of birds, drones, or weather anomalies. Suddenly, something struck the side of the fuselage, sharply and silently, as if someone had poked the plane at a speed unmatched by any known object. After landing, technicians found a perfectly round dent. Not a scratch, not a trace of ice, a perfectly smooth geometry, like a tool mark. No fragments, no particles, no material that could identify it. The object didn't disintegrate or leave any traces, it simply passed by. Radars were blank. The military ruled out their own satellites. There were no satellites on that line, and yet the impact was a fact. The instruments recorded it, the crew heard it, and the metal remembered it. Such collisions are rarely discussed publicly. But this case made it into the media. Contact with an unidentified object. What exactly collided with the plane at an altitude of 9 kilometers has still not been explained.
Ancient chemical weapons. Archaeologist Simon James from the University of Leicester has presented the results of his research, which could change our understanding of the use of chemical weapons in ancient times. He claims to have found evidence of the use of poisonous substances in 256 AD, during the siege of the Roman city of Dura Europos on the banks of the Euphrates River. James's research focused on excavations carried out in this ancient city, which was besieged by the Persian army. In one of the tunnels dug by the Romans to prevent the enemy from advancing, the remains of 20 soldiers were found. These men died while standing in their passages, and James proposed the theory that the use of chemical weapons could have caused their deaths. Traces of bitumen and sulfur crystals were found in the tunnel, substances that emit toxic fumes when burned. According to the scientists, the Persians could have installed a brazier in their tunnel, placing these materials on it. When the Romans breached the wall, deadly fumes began to leak out, killing all the city's defenders within minutes. Despite the use of chemical weapons, the Persian army was unable to breach the city's walls through the mines. However, Dura Europos was captured, and the methods by which the Persians managed to do so remain unclear. Ancient frieze deciphered in Mexico. A frieze discovered in Oaxaca in 2018 contains glyphs symbolizing themes associated with superstition and social hierarchy in the Zapotec and Mixtec cultures. Archaeologists from the National Institute of Anthropology and History of Mexico have interpreted the glyphs of an ancient frieze excavated in Oaxaca, providing insight into the cultural norms of the Zapotecs and Mixtecs. The 15-meter frieze, dated between 650 and 850 AD, is believed to have originally been about 30 meters long. It decorated the main facade of a structure, most likely a residential building, known as the Casa del Sur, House of the South, where it would be visible from the bustling ceremonial square, signaling political or economic importance. Archaeologists believe that the frieze was partly destroyed by the Zapotecs who vacated the site, based on the discovery of fragments of a funerary urn at the site. According to Nelly Robles Garcia, National Coordinator for Archaeology at the Cultural Heritage Institution, the effigies are believed to have been sacrifices that may have been made with the intention of demystifying the space. Monte Alban features sprawling plazas and truncated pyramids inspired by the architectural style of Teotihuacan, as well as elaborate underground passages, a Tlachtli ball court, and some 200 elaborate tombs. It was settled by the Mixtecs during the Spanish colonization in the 16th century. Archaeological research in the area is ongoing. Stone berries. In the desert of the southwestern United States, strange rounded stones were found, like stone berries scattered on the sand. At first, they were mistaken for weathered rock fragments, until it was discovered that similar structures are found in Hopi legends about heavenly seeds and that similar formations exist on Mars. Their shape is perfectly spherical or slightly elongated, with a smooth, polished surface. Geologists call them concretions, but typically such stones form in layers pressed together by rocks. Here they lay loose as if someone had emptied them from a bag. The strangest thing is their chemical composition. Inside, there are iron layers that are very reminiscent of the Martian blueberries, spheres discovered by exactly the same teams on Mars by the Opportunity rover. The composition of the elements is almost identical. The Hopi call these berries the traces of visiting teachers from the Red Star. Scientific theories are simpler, a rare form of mineralization, prolonged wind erosion, but then it's unclear why the structures are identical in different countries, and why some of the berries seem to have been scorched by high temperatures never experienced in these areas. This is a conundrum for archaeologists. Is it an artifact, a mineral, or a trace of events we can't yet describe? But the fact remains. Such forms are repeated on both Earth and Mars, and sometimes nature replicates itself too precisely in places where the conditions for it would seem impossible.
Life in a meteorite. Researchers studying a meteorite found on the island of Sri Lanka have said that it is not just a rock fragment from outer space, but a potential artifact of extraterrestrial origin. The analysis revealed the presence of fossils of microscopic algae, which, according to scientists, may be evidence of the panspermia hypothesis, the idea that life is spread throughout the universe via asteroids and comets. These discoveries have attracted widespread interest as they could support the theory of the existence of life beyond Earth. However, the results have been criticized by the scientific community. Some experts argue that the fossils found are too similar to terrestrial microorganisms living in fresh water. The possibility of contamination of the meteorite by terrestrial life forms during its stay on the surface of the Earth also remains a serious argument against the hypothesis of extraterrestrial origin of the find.
Family tomb with 20 mummies. One of the most significant finds of the Egyptian-Italian mission was made in 2019 when archaeologists unearthed a tomb that had been used many times over many centuries, from the Ptolemaic era to the Roman period. Like many burial structures found in the area, it turned out to be looted, but scientists found 35 mummies, as well as valuable artifacts, vessels, palm wood stretchers, figurines, and cardboard. Archaeologists from the Egyptian-Italian mission explored the territory to the west of the city of Aswan in the vicinity of the mausoleum of Aga Khan III, which was built in 1956 on the site of an ancient necropolis of the 6th century BC to the 4th century AD. Scientists managed to find a large tomb which was plundered in antiquity. However, 20 well-preserved mummies dating back to the Greco-Roman period still rested in it. Among them, archaeologists singled out the mummy of a child, which, along with the cartonnage, was in a terracotta sarcophagus. The tomb itself consists of 4 burial chambers carved into the rock, the entrance to which was equipped with sandstone blocks and adobe bricks. According to Professor Patrizia Piacentini from the University of Milan, who led the mission from the Italian side, members of the same family were buried in this burial structure. She noted that in addition to the mummies themselves, archaeologists managed to find valuable artifacts of that era. A sacrificial table, a copper necklace, stone slabs with inscriptions, and wooden figurines depicting the mythical Ba bird. The Codex that saw the future. A 12th century Mayan scroll, long considered a collection of incomprehensible symbols, is housed in a Dresden museum, until scientists realized it was a highly accurate ancient algorithm for predicting solar eclipses. The Maya took a cycle of 405 lunar months and noted 38 new moons during which the sun could disappear. But their genius lay elsewhere. They regularly reset the calendar by 223 or 358 months, preventing the error from accumulating. Thus, the table remained accurate for centuries. Modern astrophysicists have verified the model. They compared the codex with 145 actual eclipses observed by the Maya. Everything matched. Moreover, this method can be used today simply by continuing their calculations. For the Maya, an eclipse was a sign from the gods, but the calculations themselves are pure mathematics, constructed without telescopes or instruments, only observations and memory. And now it is becoming clear. The Dresden Codex is not an ancient relic, but proof that man is capable of understanding the rhythms of the universe even without technology. Metallic objects from Gaius. The La Mana caves in Ecuador have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also fans of mysticism and ufology for many years. The story of the discovery of metal objects in these caves is shrouded in mystery and mysticism. According to legend, metal plates were discovered in La Mana with symbols engraved on them that resemble modern diagrams, maps, and even technical drawings. These findings became the basis for hypotheses about the existence of an unknown civilization in the distant past that possessed highly developed technologies, or about contacts between ancient people and extraterrestrial beings. Supporters of these theories argue that such complex and detailed symbols could not have been created with primitive tools and should indicate more advanced knowledge. Some researchers even suggest that the plates could have served as star maps or technological instructions left by aliens. However, most scientists are very skeptical about these findings. There is no conclusive evidence that the metal objects from La Mana are indeed ancient. Some experts point to possible traces of modern metalworking and the inconsistency of these artifacts with styles and technologies known in ancient Ecuador. Moreover, there is a lack of reliable dating and context for the objects, which further undermines their authenticity. Archaeologists believe that these artifacts may have been created in a later period, perhaps as part of a hoax or to attract tourists. Thus, despite the fascinating and mysterious story of the metal objects from the caves of La Mana, their origin and meaning remain in question. The story of the caves of La Mana is an example of how myths and legends can intertwine with reality, creating fascinating but often unreliable stories about our past. U.S. tourist discovers ancient jug. It is believed that the jug is 5,000 years old. An American tourist accidentally discovered an ancient and well-preserved early Bronze Age earthenware vessel at Qumran, which is located in the Judean desert near the Dead Sea. Robbie Brown stumbled upon the ancient find in February when he and a friend decided to climb 328 feet to explore a cave known as Cave 53. The ancient jar is thought to be around 5,000 years old and could potentially be the first intact jar found in areas from this distant time period. Brown is no stranger to archaeological discoveries in Israel. In 2017, he took part in excavations in the same area, which resulted in the discovery of an ancient blank scroll, as well as ancient olive seeds and dates. Qumran, located in the Judean desert, is an area full of caves and became world famous when a Bedouin accidentally discovered the priceless Dead Sea Scrolls in 1947. Due to its remote location and dry air, the Judean desert contains a high concentration of well-preserved ancient artifacts. Over the years, the Judean desert region has attracted a large number of professional archaeologists and amateur archaeologists such as Brown. Archaeologists and historians believe that hundreds of Jews lived in the Qumran area in ancient times, based on the number of buildings and Jewish ritual baths discovered. Where did the storm that raged for 350 years disappear to? Jupiter always seemed eternal, a gigantic gas ocean, swirling winds, and its main eye, the Great Red Spot. Larger than Earth, the storm had been rotating for hundreds of years and visible through telescopes since the days of Cassini. It was a kind of cosmic beacon, a landmark that never changed. And then it was gone. When data from James Webb and Juno converged, astronomers initially couldn't believe it. The storm's structure had truly disintegrated. What once looked like a giant scarlet cyclone now consists of pale streaks and traces of turbulence, as if someone had erased the stain from the surface of the gas giant. The causes are scientifically explained: changing winds, chaotic interactions between atmospheric currents, and the depletion of the storm's internal resources. But even scientists admit that the speed with which this centuries-old vortex disappeared defies conventional models. A storm that had lingered for centuries simply vanished in a matter of months. No astronomer expected such a pace, and while reports are citing atmospheric dynamics, people are noticing something far more simple. Something in our system is changing too quickly. Resin in the burial ground. Near the River Deben in England, a 27-meter ship was excavated, which was used as a tomb. In fact, this discovery took place as early as 8 decades ago at Sutton Hoo, an ancient cemetery considered one of the most important burial sites in the UK. Scientists suggest that the ship with precious metals and stones is the tomb of King Redwald, who died in 624 or 625 AD. Most intriguing was the black substance found all over the boat. It was originally thought to be a waterproofing agent, but thanks to the best technologies that became available in 2016, repeated tests showed an unexpected result. The tar-like material was a rare type of bitumen found exclusively in the Middle East, but what this bitumen did on the ship is not clear. It may have been exported at the time. The first children's car. Boys love to play with cars. Each house has a whole fleet of a wide variety of toy cars. How long has a car been a child's toy? When did the first baby car appear? The discovery of scientists sheds light on this. Archaeologists excavating in southeastern Turkey have discovered an ancient toy that looks like a car without a motor. The age of the find is tentatively estimated at 5,000 years. It is a miniature copy of a war chariot made in the form of a clay children's toy. The car was found in one of the tombs in the ancient city of Sogmatar. The find belongs to the Bronze Age and presumably was made for the amusement of the children of a ruler or an official. The toy makes it possible to judge the level of art and features of children's games 50 centuries ago. Together with the chariot, archaeologists found a miniature horse-drawn carriage and a rattle. All finds were made in the necropolis of the once prosperous city of Sogmatar. In total, there are about 120 tombs in the necropolis. Of these, only a third has been studied. Faces seen with the eyes. In the declassified CIA archives, there's a program with the beautiful name Stargate. Officially, it was a study of paranormal abilities. Unofficially, it was an attempt to see where neither satellites nor spies could reach. Subjects with extrasensory perception were seated in a room, given a coded target, and asked to describe what they saw. The reports contained strange coincidences. Several participants independently spoke of bases, not on Earth, but in Alaska, Africa, and Titan, a moon of Saturn. They described identical creatures with large heads and pale skin, rooms, equipment, and strange domes. For some, this is pure fantasy. For others, it's evidence of work with something that doesn't fit into conventional intelligence. It's important to understand there is no scientific confirmation of these visions. That's precisely why the program was ultimately shut down as unreliable. But the fact remains, for decades, the CIA invested money, time, and people in an attempt to reach foreign objects, not with missiles, but with consciousness. This means that the issue of UFOs and possible bases was of great concern to someone long before the current fashion. And when today these same agencies claim they have almost nothing to add to the UFO topic, it's strange to remember that they once seriously tried to look at possible alien bases with their eyes closed. Nomadic figures. One of the most mysterious artifacts of the African continent is the Nomadic figures found in Sierra Leone, West Africa. These ancient sculptures, carved from stone, depict strange creatures with disproportionately large heads, bulging eyes, and other unusual features that are not typical of human anatomy. Some of them also depict scenes that can be interpreted as mythological or religious. The unique shapes and features of these figures have attracted the attention of not only archaeologists, but also supporters of theories about ancient astronauts. Some researchers believe that the Nomadic figures may represent images of extraterrestrial beings that may have been in contact with the ancient inhabitants of the region. According to them, the strange proportions and features of the figures may indicate that they were created under the impression of real creatures of extraterrestrial origin. This theory, although not scientifically proven, adds an aura of mystery to the Nomadic figurines and attracts the attention of ufologists and lovers of mysticism. Official science considers the Nomadic figurines to be religious or ritual objects, and it is believed that these artifacts were most likely used in ancient rites or rituals associated with the worship of gods or spirits, since they could symbolize certain mythological characters. As I have already told you before, when archaeologists or historians cannot explain the origin of an artifact, it necessarily becomes an object of religious significance. Interestingly, the Nomadic figurines are often found deep in the ground, sometimes together with other ancient artifacts, various iron objects or weapons, which complicates the task of dating them and establishing their cultural context. Some finds indicate that these artifacts could have existed in very ancient times, perhaps long before the appearance of known civilizations in this region. A hoard of gold jewelry. Archaeologists, while exploring the Karnak temple complex in Luxor, have discovered an ancient vessel filled with gold jewelry, beads, and figurines of Egyptian gods. According to experts, the find dates back to the 26th dynasty of Egypt and is about 2,600 years old. Jewelry in ancient Egypt was not just luxury items. It was considered magical amulets that protected the owner from evil and disease. They played an important role not only in life, but also in the underworld, providing protection for eternity. Among the artifacts, the figurines of the god Amun, the goddess Mut, and their son Khonsu stand out. They were probably used as amulets and worn around the neck. Amun was considered the king of the gods and the patron of the pharaohs, and later united with Ra, becoming the embodiment of both the visible and invisible deity. All the found items will be restored and possibly exhibited in the Luxor Museum. Zone 21, Eco Museum. There's a place in Cusco that even archaeologists speak of with caution. Zone 21 isn't a museum, but a site where everything is too technological for the Inca era. There are stone platforms there so smoothly worked, as if the stone was cut not by a primitive tool, but by something with a perfectly controlled vibration. Nearby are strangely shaped blocks that don't resemble temples or outbuildings. The angles are too precise, the surfaces too smooth, and the marks look like the imprints of machinery. Local legends call this zone the place where the gods of light descended. And the strangest thing is that flashes of light are regularly detected above these slabs, thin vertical pillars that appear for a few seconds. Drones detect fluctuations in the magnetic field, and compasses seem to float there, as if something is hidden beneath the stone. Scientists call all this unexplored geological features, but they themselves admit Zone 21 is too out of context, too smooth, too neat, too reminiscent of the work of someone who knew how to work stone differently than the people of the 13th century. Rock tomb. In Malta, construction workers have accidentally stumbled upon an ancient tomb dating back some 2,300 years. In September, while installing new water lines near a hospital in the town of Birkirkara, workers discovered a chamber cut into the rock. Archaeologists later confirmed that it was a Punic tomb. Subsequent excavations revealed the tomb's central well and 3 burial chambers. The entrances were sealed with the original stone slabs. Through narrow cracks, archaeologists saw skeletons and artifacts. Inside the chambers were bones arranged in a specific pattern, as well as urns with ashes. The bones were likely moved to make room for new burials. In total, at least 14 burials were found in 3 chambers. The remains have already been moved to a lab for further analysis. Archaeologists plan to conduct radiocarbon dating and DNA analysis to learn more about the Punic community that created the tomb. The Punic civilization, also known as the Carthaginian Republic, was one of the most influential powers in the Mediterranean until its conquest by the Romans around 150 BC. Ancient clay doll. This tiny clay figure in the form of a man less than 4 centimeters long was discovered in 1889 in the city of Nampa, Idaho, and since then this artifact has been called the Doll from Nampa. That year, a group of workers were digging wells trying to find underground water, and in one of these wells, from a depth of 90 meters, a pump, along with tiny clay balls, pulled out this tiny doll. In appearance, it was definitely a man-made object and not a game of nature, but at such a depth, even the bones of fossil human ancestors are not often seen. Experts date this layer with ancient clay at about 2 million years, and the figurine itself and clay balls immediately guess such riddles that have not been solved so far. Was it a fake? Doubtful. Could the figurine and balls get into the well after it was drilled? It is unlikely. A late check showed that it was very difficult for a foreign object to get into the well. But if it really was taken from such a depth, how did it get there? When the figurine was shown to an antiquities specialist, he immediately drew attention to the red spots of iron oxide, which were even in the most inaccessible places of the doll. Thus, it apparently really laid at a depth for many years. The same spots were found on the balls and were exactly identical. According to one version, this figurine was created during the Upper Paleolithic, 40 to 12,000 years ago, when ancient people created their famous figured Venuses, and it allegedly could penetrate into an older layer later through a crack. However, the figurine from Nampa does not look like the Paleolithic Venuses at all. Venus were primarily distinguished by wide hips and large breasts. The same figure is made much more simply, primitively, and there are no hints of wide hips, and the chest is only barely indicated. The only similarity is that the figurine also depicts a woman. Could this figurine really have been made 2 million years ago? Who lived on Earth in those days when there were no Cro-Magnons or even Neanderthals? Approximately 2.3 million years ago, a skilled man appeared on Earth, the pinnacle of whose achievements were stone axes, stone scrapers, and other primitive stone tools. The doll from Nampa has been the subject of controversy between researchers for many years, but gradually they forgot about it, and it is not even known where it is now. The last information about it was in 1979, when Professor Albert Wright from Oberlin College studied the doll. A ghost forest in Transylvania. In Transylvania, there's a place called the Bermuda Triangle of Europe. Hoya Bachu is a small forest where people disappear. Orbs of light are detected, and photographs of things that never happened appear. Locals have long considered this area a hole between worlds, and the more data they gather, the harder it is to dismiss their claims. The entrance to the forest looks normal, but after just a few dozen steps, the trees change shape. Their trunks twist into spirals. Their crowns arch, as if pulled in different directions. Geologists have found no signs of strong winds or soil deformation. It's as if the plants themselves were growing in a distorted space. Magnetic devices go crazy here. Compass needles rotate 180 degrees, and cell phones lose signal even with full coverage. But the main thing is the luminous phenomena. At night, smooth orbs up to a meter in diameter appear over the clearing.
They move in a way that neither fire nor drones nor atmospheric plasmas move. They freeze in place, abruptly change trajectory, and vanish without a trace. Thermal imaging cameras show them as cold, meaning they're not flames or hot air. Scientists have tried to explain this by using discharges, but discharges don't hang in the air for 10 seconds. In recent years, other phenomena have been recorded in the forest: shadows moving against the direction of light, figures without a heat source, and, most bizarrely, the appearance of people in photographs who weren't there. A tourist takes a photo of an empty trail, and in the frame, a silhouette appears, sometimes blurry, sometimes clear, always with no sign of a living person. Hoya Bachu doesn't look like a mystical place. It looks like an area where something violates conventional physics. And while this was once considered a legend, today this part of Europe is officially included in the list of anomalous zones where unexplained light objects are recorded. Some believe that there is an old corridor here, a place where lights have repeatedly descended, which in other countries would be called UFOs. Village 70 million years old. This story is rather dark, strange, and mysterious. Was an underground settlement 70 million years old really found in Belgium? And who lived in it? Let's start in order. A very religious artist, Robert Garce, fascinated by the Bible and ancient civilizations, decided to build a fairy castle with biblical characters in the village of Eben Emael in the province of Henegouwen, Belgium. It took Robert 15 years to build what he had conceived, and today the castle serves as a museum dedicated to the art of Garce and his archaeological finds. Garce Castle has 7 levels, 5 levels above the ground and 2 levels below the ground. The structure itself is 12 meters, 40 feet square on each side, supported by 4 towers at each corner. Garce deliberately designed the castle to match ancient measurement systems. Each dimension in the tower is symbolic. The constructed masterpiece Eben Ezer is the personification of humanity described in the Book of Revelations. 4 giant statues of biblical creatures are erected on the tops of the towers: an eagle, a bull, a lion, and a man. The interior of the castle is filled with biblical, archaeological, paleontological, and geological works by Garce. So during construction, while digging a pit under the foundation, Garce's builders discovered a whole network of tunnels, more than 100 fossils, and what is most incredible, underground, not far from the construction site, cave structures similar to a village in a layer 70 million years old. In general, there are a lot of underground tunnels in Belgium, and some of them are so long that they have not yet been fully explored. Well-preserved remains of a mosasaur skull were also found there. When Garce explored the nearby underground flint mines and tunnels, he found many stone toys and figurines. Some looked like stone dolls made of rounded flat stones with engraving. They all look very primitive and unlike what ordinary archaeologists are used to. Garce scanned the underground village and discovered straight walls, tables, benches, and decorative ornaments carved into the walls. It looked like an ordinary village with streets, only this one was underground. Above the village are 3 layers of oceanic sediments, which indicates that Belgium was covered by the ocean 3 times. The layer where the underground village is located is 70 million years old. Of course, this is a controversial archaeological discovery because the cave village could have been excavated much later. It might be interesting for scientists these days to explore an ancient underground village in Belgium, but it's too late. By a strange coincidence, the village was destroyed by an explosion in a mine before it could be explored. Why was this opening closed? Why didn't anyone want to explore this place? And why were these cave structures clearly deliberately destroyed? A version suggests itself that this place was known to archaeologists, but apparently the finds did not fit into the modern, officially accepted interpretation of ancient history, and when the village was accidentally discovered, it was simply destroyed. Ancient gramophone records. In 1938, Chinese archaeologist Chi Pu-te entered the Bayan Karaula cave and saw smooth stone gramophone records. Each disc is the size of a palm, with a hole in the middle. Along the front side, there is a spiral path, and in it, if you look closely with a magnifying glass, you can see what seem to be tiny hieroglyphs. The text tells of a small drop of people who flew from a distant star 12,000 years ago and crashed in the mountains. The legend immediately acquired details. They talked about 716 discs, about a warehouse in Beijing University, and about one of them emitting a pure, almost musical electrical impulse during an experiment.
When ethnographers tried to see the artifacts, they were not found in any museum in China. Photos of the discs only surfaced in magazine clippings in the 1960s, and the translation of the hieroglyphs turned out to be the work of a German reporter, Reinhard Wegerer, who later admitted that he relied on the stories of local guides without access to the original. Real archaeologists of Gansu and Sichuan only know about the Neolithic savannas, where round burial slabs with a shallow spiral are found, but there is no microtext or space chronicle there, and yet the story lives on. Every time a simple stone disc is found in some cave, social networks ask, what if this is one of Dropa's lost records? While not a single authentic disc has been shown to the public, the imagination continues to spin, as if the spiral on the stone itself reproduces a new legend.
Buddha wheels and devil's carousels. Marine bioluminescence, a phenomenon in which some marine life emits light, has been known for a long time. For example, some types of plankton are capable of creating light bright enough to be noticed by the human eye. This phenomenon is often associated with observations of a glow on the surface of the water or just below it. However, in addition to scientific explanations, there are also more mystical stories about mysterious circles on the water. These glowing rings are called Buddha wheels or devil's carousels. Interestingly, the former ones, according to one version, were so named by Eastern sailors and the latter by Europeans. The Chinese considered such phenomena to be favorable omens, while Europeans, in particular Christians, perceived them as a bad omen. Note how people in the West and East, observing the same natural phenomenon, interpret it completely oppositely. At the same time, despite the popularity of these stories, there is not a single official documented evidence of such phenomena. Perhaps the mysterious glowing circles are associated with marine plankton, which creates a bright glow in the darkness of the ocean. It is also worth noting that such stories about Buddha wheels and devil's carousels are often reflected in folklore, but so far remain only part of myths and legends, not confirmed by factual data.
The contact hinted at by Bush Sr. One phrase by George Bush Sr. has long since become the stuff of legend. When asked about UFOs, he simply replied, "We won't explain some of the events of the 1960s." And almost everyone recalled one incident. New Mexico, 1964. Patrolman Lonnie Zamora saw a flash of light near a hill and assumed it was an accident. But upon arrival, he stumbled upon a metal oval object on 4 supports and 2 small figures in white overalls. They were shorter than a man, their movements quick, like technicians doing their job. Zamora approached. The object roared, rose vertically, and vanished. On the ground, there were imprints of the supports, melted sand, and traces of heat that didn't match any known technology. An hour later, the FBI, Air Force, and CIA officers cordoned off the area. Reports were collected, analyses were conducted, and everything was immediately classified. No attempts to ridicule the eyewitness, no fireballs or weather balloons, only silence. And when, years later, Bush hinted at events that were too early to discuss, it became clear to many he was referring specifically to this contact, one of the best documented cases of an unknown object landing. Wolf's Egg Iron Cube. Austria, 1885, a worker cuts a piece of brown coal and a tiny iron cube with smooth edges and grooves, as if cut with a lathe, rolls out of the black lump. Newspapers immediately dubbed the find a bolt from the Stone Age because the coal was deposited in layers that were approximately 20 million years old. The cube ended up in a museum in Salzburg, where it was discovered that it was not pure iron, but cast iron with a high content of carbon and slag, an alloy typical of 19th century blast furnaces. A tiny tail is visible on the edge, the place where liquid metal flowed out of the mold. Under a microscope, the surface is dotted with porous rust cavities like blast furnace slag. It looks like a piece of waste accidentally got into a coal trolley and sank into the seam with it. And yet, looking at the almost perfect planes of the cube, visitors speculate that the geometry is too correct for a random fragment. What if it is a part of an unknown mechanism that nature hid in the thickness of the rock? A second object that appeared out of time. While the world was discussing the interstellar object 3I/ATLAS, A report of another object, C/2025V1, barely made the news. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary comet, but its behavior strangely coincided with the movement of ATLAS, as if the two objects were connected. C/2025V1 appeared too close in time, too perfectly aligned in trajectory, and began changing its orbit precisely as 3I/ATLAS entered the inner solar system. Astronomers recorded a sudden increase in brightness for no apparent reason, a burst of brightness common in comets when their nuclei break apart. However, in this case, its shape remained stable, and its brightness persisted for several hours, as if the object were reflecting a signal. The strangest thing was its position. For several weeks, it was in what is considered a blind sector for most ground-based telescopes, a narrow region difficult to see due to the Earth-Sun geometry. The two objects' motion maps showed that C/2025V1 wasn't simply parallel to Atlas, but rather occupied a point between it and Earth, as if accompanying or tracking it. No one has officially stated this, but reports from several observatories explicitly note the object's dynamics complicate model construction. This is a rare formulation for an ordinary comet. Meanwhile, observers have begun to speculate unofficially. A possible probe traveling ahead of Atlas, recording environmental parameters, gravity, and solar activity. Even setting aside UFO theory, the fact remains. Two rare bodies entered the solar system almost simultaneously, one changing brightness without being destroyed, the other acting as if it were slowing down in front of the moon. There are too many coincidences to ignore, and if ATLAS is truly not a coincidence, then C/2025V1 looks like its scout. A tomb that survived earthquakes. On the site of the ancient city of Pasargadae, the capital of the Achaemenid Empire, lies a tomb traditionally associated with Cyrus the Great. The structure was erected around 530 BC and remains one of the most resilient monuments of ancient Iran. Over 2,500 years, it has withstood dozens of earthquakes without losing its structural integrity. Research has shown that the architects used principles similar to modern seismic isolation technologies. The tomb's foundation consists of several layers of limestone. The bottom layer is bound with lime mortar, ash, and sand, while the upper blocks are laid loosely on top. Between the layers is a spacer that allows the structure to slide slightly during tremors. This reduced the load and prevented the collapse of the stonework. The upper part of the tomb is constructed of massive blocks connected with metal clamps. Despite its simple form, a cubic chamber on a 6-step foundation, the structure is a sophisticated engineering system. Modeling conducted by the Islamic Azad University showed that during strong ground vibrations, the upper part is indeed capable of shifting relative to the foundation, absorbing the impact energy. There is still no definitive proof that Cyrus was actually buried in this mausoleum. The tomb was opened and plundered in ancient times, and the epitaph mentioned in sources has not survived. Despite the controversy over the identity of the deceased, the structure remains one of the oldest examples of earthquake-resistant architecture and evidence that Achaemenid engineers understood the nature of earthquakes much more deeply than is commonly believed. The mysterious harpy. The Queen of the Night relief, created around 1800 BC, is one of the most enigmatic artifacts of Mesopotamia. Also known as the Burney relief, it depicts a winged goddess with bird claws instead of feet, standing on the backs of two lions. On either side of her are owls, symbolizing power over the darkness of the night and the spirit world. The identity of the depicted goddess remains a subject of debate. Some researchers believe that this is Ishtar, Inanna, the Babylonian goddess of love, war, and fertility. Others suggest that the relief depicts Ereshkigal, the dark mistress of the underworld, Ishtar's sister. The symbolism of the relief indicates the power and supernatural strength of the goddess. The relief was probably a cult object associated with religious rituals or magical practices. Its rich detail and monumentality speak to the importance of the depicted deity in the beliefs of the era. Today, this artifact is kept in the British Museum. Ritual table in Tava Tepe. In Azerbaijan, a team of Italian and Azerbaijani archaeologists discovered a 3,500-year-old ritual table in the ancient settlement of Tava Tepe. This place is located near the borders of Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. During the excavations, a round-shaped adobe building was found. The structure includes a kitchen area and a ritual table. Between 1500 and 750 BC, late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, nomadic peoples probably used Tawa Tepe as a resting place before traveling through the mountains. Archaeologists found a ritual table with 8 recesses and many ceramic containers, bowls, vessels made of black-fired ceramics, and long flat stones for mixing food. In the corner of the kitchen there is a thick layer of ash and clay tokens with fingerprints which could serve as food coupons. The entrance originally had wooden columns and a thatched roof covered the entire complex, which was about 15 meters in diameter. Animal bones and discarded pottery were found outside. The human figurines placed in the sacrificial pits and the fact that the structure was sealed along with all the utensils indicate its ceremonial nature.
The US and Russia have suddenly remembered nuclear testing. In recent years, the world convinced itself that the era of nuclear testing was over, but the situation has changed dramatically. The US officially announced its readiness to conduct a rapid subcritical experiment in Nevada, and Russia, almost simultaneously, announced that it could resume testing on Novaya Zemlya, the first time in decades. Officially, this involves research into the safety of warheads and modernization of the arsenal. However, experts have noted that the preparations are proceeding unusually quickly and are being carefully concealed under technical reports. Something else has also emerged. Satellite images have revealed activity in areas usually left untouched without serious reason. The US has cleared several underground tunnels, while Russia has begun upgrading old observation posts where they previously monitored air shock waves. There are no direct explanations for this, no conflict, no arms race on a level that would require actual testing. A theory has emerged that governments are preparing systems capable of operating in space, from intercepting objects to testing the resilience of satellites to extreme electromagnetic emissions. Although officially described as technical measures, the coincidence of activity by 2 nuclear powers has led many to wonder if the cause may be external, not political. Military officials tend to be vague, but even they rarely synchronize such programs without a serious reason. To the average person, this all seems alarming. 2 major countries suddenly acting as if something is happening beyond the atmosphere that should be checked in advance. There is no official explanation, but the fact that nuclear test sites that have been dormant for decades are once again coming to life raises questions in itself. The further we watch, the fewer coincidences there are. Perhaps the answers were there all along. Thank you for watching this video to the end. Bye everyone.